Nathan Hale, the CEO of Hale Enterprises, sat at the head of the sleek glass table, his fingers lightly tapping the surface. He had always believed himself untouchable, a titan of the business world. After all, his rise to the top had been relentless, built on cunning decisions and an unyielding ambition. But today, everything felt different. The world he had carefully constructed was slipping through his fingers, and he was powerless to stop it. The digital clock on his desk blinked as if mocking his helplessness. On the wall, a giant screen flickered to life, showcasing a breaking news report that would forever change the course of his life. The memo was legitimate. Corporate espionage within Hale Enterprises, the reporter announced with a grave expression. Nathan's stomach churned as the weight of the words sank in. For a moment, everything was silent. The world outside his office felt like a distant memory. It was as though time had frozen, leaving only the harsh glow of the screen illuminating the shadows of his office. His thoughts raced. Who could have done this? Who had betrayed him so deeply? The betrayal stung like nothing he had ever felt before. The bitter taste of trust shattered. His mind screamed for action. But how could he act when he didn't know who was behind this? His trusted allies, his closest confidants, could one of them have turned on him? Rachel, his CFO, had been his right hand for years, but what if she was the one pulling the strings? Or was it someone else? As the reporter's words echoed in his mind, Nathan knew he had only one choice: find the traitor and fight back. But first, he needed to face the inevitable storm coming his way. Hale Enterprises was in danger, and he had no one left to trust. Nathan pushed back from the table without a word, the legs of his chair scraping against the polished floor. The executives parted instinctively, like water splitting around a rock. He walked briskly down the corridor, his mind a torrent of accusations and possibilities. The walls seemed narrower than usual, the framed awards and glossy photographs of his past triumphs now mocking him with silent judgment. Maggie, his secretary, looked up from her desk as he approached, her eyes wide. She had worked for him for over a decade, but even she had never seen him like this. Rigid posture, clenched jaw, eyes like ice. She opened her mouth to speak, but thought better of it. Nathan passed without slowing, the soft thud of his Italian leather shoes echoing in the tense silence. Outside, the late afternoon light was muted by gathering clouds, casting the hallway in a gloomy haze. Every step toward his office felt heavier, every breath tighter, as if the air itself was thick with betrayal. Somewhere deep inside, Nathan knew, this was no random attack. Someone close had orchestrated it. Nathan shoved the office door open with more force than necessary, the sound reverberating through the vast space. His office, normally a sanctuary of order and control, now felt like a war room under siege. He crossed to his desk in 3 long strides, sinking into his leather chair without removing his coat. On the desk, piles of reports lay untouched, their relevance evaporated in light of the news. His phone buzzed sharply against the wood surface. He glanced down and froze. Rachel, Thomas. His CFO. His right hand. His confidant. The one who had signed off on every major decision in the past 5 years. The one person he would have sworn on his life would never turn on him. His thumb hovered over the screen, torn between the urge to confront her and the instinct to protect what little control he still had. Before he could decide, the door eased open. Maggie stood there, half in the hallway, half in the room, her hand clutching the frame as if unsure whether to step inside. "Sir?" she asked softly, but her voice was hesitant, almost afraid. The phone buzzed again, insistent. Nathan snatched it up, pressing it to his ear. "Rachel," he said, his voice low and sharp. There was no greeting on the other end, no attempt at pleasantries, only her voice, cold and deliberate. "Nathan, I didn't want it to come to this. But you forced my hand." Her words landed like a blade between his ribs. "You knew the risks you were taking. I warned you." His pulse spiked. "You leaked it," he said, more statement than question. There was a pause, long enough to make his knuckles whiten around the phone. "You won't win this one," she said, and the line went dead. Nathan lowered the phone slowly, his mind spiraling in disbelief. Rachel, the woman he had trusted with the company's lifeblood, had not only betrayed him, she had declared war. The silence that followed was deafening, pressing in on him like a weight he couldn't throw off. Nathan set the phone down slowly, the metallic click echoing in the stillness of the room. His fingers lingered on the device, as though letting go would make the betrayal more permanent. He leaned back in his chair, eyes tracing the ceiling as if the answers were etched there. Outside, the city lights began to flicker on against the darkening sky, but the view felt hollow. His empire was under siege, and for the first time, he wasn't sure if he could hold the gates. The steady hum of the city below was a cruel reminder that the world was moving on, indifferent to his downfall. He thought of the years, decades, he had spent building Hale Enterprises from the ground up. Every sleepless night, every calculated risk, every ruthless decision. All of it now balanced on the knife's edge of survival. And the knife, he realized bitterly, was in Rachel's hand. Somewhere deep in the building a door slammed, the sound carrying like a warning. The storm had arrived, and it was already inside the walls. The storm outside had begun to spit rain against the glass, each drop tapping like a countdown to something inevitable. Nathan stood by the window, hands in his pockets, watching the city lose its sharp edges beneath the drizzle. His phone rested on the desk behind him, still silent after Rachel's parting words. He felt the tension coil tighter in his chest. There was no time to brood. He needed answers. He turned sharply, crossing the office to press the intercom. "Maggie, get me Robert Carter, now." Robert was his oldest confidant, a man who'd been with Hale Enterprises since the first deal Nathan ever closed. If anyone could be trusted, it was Robert. Yet, even as he gave the order, a thought crept in. Can I even trust him anymore? The betrayal had already seeped into his bones, infecting every thought. The rain intensified, streaking the windows with shimmering trails, and Nathan's reflection in the glass looked older than he remembered. His empire was fracturing, and he was running out of allies. Robert arrived within minutes, his heavy footsteps echoing across the marble floor, before he even reached the office door. Nathan gestured him inside without preamble. Robert, a tall man in his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair and a deliberate way of speaking, closed the door behind him. "I heard," he said quietly. His voice carried weight, like a stone dropped into still water. Nathan moved to the desk, leaning forward. "Tell me you had nothing to do with this." Robert's eyes flickered, almost imperceptibly before settling into a steady gaze. "Nathan, I've been with you too long to play games." The answer wasn't enough. "Not tonight." Nathan studied him for any crack in the facade, any sign of guilt. The rain tapped harder on the glass, a steady rhythm to the silence that followed. Robert finally stepped forward. "Whoever's behind this, Rachel or not, they've planned it for months. We're already playing catch-up." Nathan paced the length of the office, his mind racing. "Months," he muttered. "They've been setting this up under my nose." Robert remained by the desk, watching him. "We can still get ahead, but you'll need to move fast and be ruthless." Nathan stopped, his eyes narrowing. "Define ruthless." Robert didn't flinch. "Cut off anyone who's even suspected, lock down the accounts, freeze access to sensitive files, and Nathan, make an example of someone. Publicly." The suggestion was sharp, almost surgical in its cruelty. Nathan's instinct screamed against it, but his ambition whispered otherwise. This was no time for sentiment. He nodded once, the decision already forming in his mind. Somewhere someone would pay the price for Rachel's betrayal, and their downfall would be the first warning shot. An alert chimed on Nathan's phone, pulling his attention to the screen. It was a forwarded message, an internal memo about to leak to the press, stamped confidential in bold red. His heart clenched. It detailed classified project figures, sensitive partnerships, and private negotiations. Robert stepped closer. "If this gets out, it's not just your position, it's the company's survival." Nathan's jaw tightened. Then it doesn't get out. He moved to the desk, opening his laptop with swift precision. Fingers flew over the keyboard as he initiated lockdown protocols, bypassing even standard security layers. Robert watched, silent, as the hum of the storm outside deepened. Every keystroke felt like a countdown. Nathan knew this was a battle he couldn't win by defense alone. He needed to strike back. By the time the clock struck midnight, the rain had slowed to a mist, but inside Nathan's office, the tension only thickened. He had locked down the company's servers, cut access to key systems, and isolated the most sensitive files. Yet the gnawing truth remained. Someone still had the upper hand. Robert broke the silence. "We need eyes inside Rachel's circle." Nathan turned, his expression unreadable. "A spy?" Robert nodded once. "Someone who can move unnoticed, gather intel, feed it back without raising suspicion." Nathan considered the proposition. It was dangerous, but then again, so was losing everything. He reached for the phone. "I think I know the right person." The faint hum of the city beyond the rain-soaked glass seemed to lean closer, as if the world itself was eavesdropping. Nathan knew exactly who to call. She wasn't part of his inner circle, which made her invisible to Rachel's allies. Her name was Emily Ward, an ambitious but underestimated operations manager. She had a knack for blending in, listening more than she spoke, and extracting truths people didn't know they'd revealed. Nathan dialed her number, the city lights glinting off the rain-streaked glass behind him. When she answered, her voice was cautious. "Mr. Hale." He wasted no time. "I have a job. It's off the record, and you'll need to be careful. One mistake, and this could bury us both." There was a pause, long enough for him to hear her measured breath, before she replied, "I'm listening." Nathan gave her the first instruction: get close to Rachel's assistant, find out who she's meeting and when. He ended the call with a curt, "Start tonight." The line clicked off, leaving only the soft hum of the storm's aftermath. Emily arrived at Hale Enterprises after hours, her footsteps muted against the marble lobby floor. Security barely noticed her. She had the calm, unhurried walk of someone who belonged. She took the elevator to the executive level, her reflection multiplying in the mirrored walls. Nathan had been right. Her presence didn't raise suspicion. When the doors opened, she stepped into the dimly lit hallway outside Rachel's office. The glow from inside spilled across the carpet. Voices murmured beyond the half-open door. Emily slipped closer, her ears straining. She recognized Rachel's clipped tone, along with a man's voice she didn't know. "The transfer will happen tomorrow," Rachel said. Emily's pulse quickened. This was more than corporate rivalry. It was a move to strip Nathan of power entirely. She backed away quietly, already replaying every word in her mind. Emily found a quiet corner near the elevator and typed a quick message to Nathan. "Rachel meeting with unknown male. Transfer planned tomorrow." She slipped her phone back into her pocket just as footsteps approached. Rachel's assistant appeared, startled to see her. "Emily, what are you doing up here?" Emily smiled faintly, masking her adrenaline. "Just dropping off some updated schedules for tomorrow's logistics meeting." The assistant seemed unconvinced, but nodded. Emily walked past, keeping her pace steady. In her peripheral vision, she saw the assistant pull out her phone, likely to report the encounter. Emily pressed the elevator button and forced herself to breathe evenly. She had the information, but now she had to get out without tipping them off. The doors slid open, and she stepped inside, the metallic echo closing her in. Nathan read Emily's message twice, his jaw tightening. The transfer wasn't just money, it was power, leverage, maybe even ownership. If it went through, Rachel would have a controlling stake before he could counter. He called Robert immediately. "They move tomorrow," Nathan said. "Then we move tonight," Robert replied. They arranged a meeting in Nathan's office within the hour. Nathan could already see the plan forming: block the transfer, trace the recipient, and hit them before they knew what happened. But there was risk. If the move backfired, it could expose everything they were trying to protect. Nathan poured himself a drink, the amber liquid catching the lamplight. He had always thrived on calculated risk, but tonight felt different. This was survival, stripped of pretense. Robert arrived with a leather folder tucked under his arm. He placed it on the desk and slid it toward Nathan. Inside were documents, charts, and a list of names. Rachel's inner circle. "We start with the weakest link," Robert said. Nathan studied the names, his gaze narrowing on one in particular. "This one, he'll fold if the pressure's right." They discussed tactics, leverage, legal threats, and the possibility of feeding disinformation to fracture their alliance. Every move felt like a game of high-stakes chess, each piece carrying the weight of their future. Nathan closed the folder and met Robert's gaze. "We hit them tonight." Outside, the city buzzed under the wet streets, unaware that a war for its corporate throne was already underway. Night had fully claimed the city, the wet streets glimmering like black glass under neon lights. Nathan stood at the head of the conference table in a private meeting room, its walls lined with soundproof panels. Robert sat opposite him, while Emily occupied a seat near the corner, her posture straight, eyes focused. "Rachel's transfer is scheduled for 9 a.m., Nathan said, his voice low but urgent. "We're intercepting it at 8:30. Robert nodded, sliding a USB drive across the table. "This contains the false ledger data. Once it's inserted into their system, their transfer will trigger alarms and lock itself down." Emily's hands tightened on her notebook. She knew this was dangerous territory. One wrong move, and they could be facing federal investigations. Nathan met their eyes in turn. "No mistakes. Tonight we take the fight to her." The plan moved quickly. Emily was to plant the data inside Rachel's system before sunrise. She slipped through the deserted hallways toward Rachel's locked office. The keycard Nathan had provided hummed against the reader, and the door clicked open. Inside, the space smelled faintly of coffee and perfume, the faint hum of electronics filling the silence. Emily moved with precision, connecting a sleek external drive to Rachel's desktop. The progress bar crawled forward. Every second felt like an eternity. The distant sound of an elevator chime jolted her. She froze, her breath shallow. Footsteps echoed closer. The footsteps grew louder. Emily yanked the drive free and slid it into her blazer pocket just as the door handle turned. Rachel's assistant stepped in, surprise flashing across her face. "Emily, why are you here?" Emily forced a calm smile. "Nathan asked me to retrieve some files for the morning meeting, pal." The assistant's eyes narrowed slightly, scanning the desk. Emily held her gaze, steady and unblinking. After a tense pause, the assistant stepped aside. "Lock up when you're done." Emily exhaled slowly, her pulse hammering in her ears. She needed to leave, fast. Emily returned to the war room, placing the drive on the table. Nathan picked it up, his expression unreadable. "Did anyone see you?" "Only her assistant," Emily replied. Robert frowned. That could be a problem. Nathan connected the drive to his laptop. Lines of code and transaction logs flashed on the screen. "It's in place," he said, a flicker of satisfaction crossing his features. Robert leaned in. "Tomorrow morning, she walks into a trap." The tension in the room eased slightly, though none of them believed the fight was over. As the meeting broke up, Nathan lingered by the window, watching rain bead and streak down the glass. The city felt different tonight, colder, more dangerous. His reflection stared back at him, eyes sharp, jaw set. Behind him, Robert and Emily exchanged a brief nod before leaving. The silence that followed was thick, almost tangible. Nathan's phone buzzed on the table. "Unknown number." He answered. A deep, calm voice said, "You're not fighting Rachel, you're fighting me." The line went dead before Nathan could speak. He stood there, gripping the phone, the realization dawning. There was someone else pulling the strings. Nathan replayed the unknown voice in his head, each word dripping with calm authority. Whoever it was, they weren't bluffing. He summoned Robert and Emily to his office before dawn. The city outside was barely waking. The horizon, a dull gray line. Robert leaned on the edge of the desk. "This isn't Rachel's game alone." Emily added, "Sounds like someone with deep pockets, someone who doesn't need to be seen." Nathan's voice was steady but tight. "A shadow investor. Someone powerful enough to back Rachel's coup and stay invisible." Silence hung in the air. Nathan moved to the window, watching headlights streak along the wet streets. "We find them, we cut the head off the snake." The first light of day broke weakly through the clouds, and for the first time, Nathan felt the scale of the war he was in. Emily volunteered to trace Rachel's financial backers through shell corporations. Hours later, she returned with a single name, Victor Dane. Nathan felt the temperature in the room drop. Dane was infamous, a ruthless venture capitalist who had dismantled companies without leaving fingerprints. "If he's in, Rachel's just the front," Robert said grimly. Nathan knew Victor's reputation. He didn't lose, he consumed. "Then we take the fight to him," Nathan replied. But they all knew striking at Dane meant stepping into a different battlefield, one where money moved faster than law, and where enemies disappeared quietly. Nathan arranged a private dinner with Victor Dane at a secluded high-rise club known for its discretion. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, Dane was already seated, a man in his late 40s with razor-sharp features and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Nathan Hale," he said smoothly. "I've heard a lot about you." Nathan sat, matching his calm. "Then you know I'm not someone you push out." Dane chuckled, low and deliberate. "Everyone can be pushed out, Nathan. It's just a matter of price." The air between them was heavy, charged with unspoken threats. This was no negotiation, it was a declaration of war. Dane's words echoed long after Nathan left the club. Back at his office, he pored over every connection between Dane and Rachel, each thread leading deeper into a web of offshore accounts and silent partners. Robert arrived with a file of potential allies, minor shareholders who might be convinced to side with Nathan before Dane consolidated power. Emily suggested planting false intel to make Dane question Rachel's loyalty. Nathan's eyes lit with cold resolve. Divide them, then move in for the kill. It wasn't pretty, but in this fight, survival came first. By midnight, the plan was in motion. Emily's fabricated intel was already seeded into Rachel's channels, hinting that Dane intended to replace her once the takeover was complete. If it worked, distrust would fracture their alliance. Nathan stood alone at the window, watching the rain start again, soft and steady. His reflection stared back, and for the first time, he saw a man who might be capable of the same ruthlessness as his enemy. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, "Careful. You're not the only one playing this game." Nathan didn't flinch. He simply turned from the window and began preparing for the morning. The morning began with chaos. News outlets were buzzing with rumors of a rift between Rachel and Victor Dane, exactly as Nathan had intended. Emily's planted intel had done its work. Nathan sat in his office, watching the financial news ticker scroll across the bottom of the screen. Stock analysts speculated on an internal power struggle at Hale Enterprises' rival holdings. Robert entered, a rare grin crossing his face. "They've taken the bait. Dane's people are questioning Rachel's loyalty." Nathan didn't smile. "Good. But this is when they're most dangerous." The air felt sharp, charged with the knowledge that one wrong step could still destroy them. Outside, the sky was a flat sheet of gray, threatening rain. Nathan leaned forward. "We push now, before they can regroup." Emily had already prepared the next move, targeting Dane's key overseas accounts. In a quiet conference room, she projected a map on the wall, dotted with red points marking offshore holding. "Hit these and Dane loses liquidity for at least 72 hours, she explained. Nathan studied the map. "Doc. Do it." Robert shifted uncomfortably. "You know this crosses a line, Nathan." Nathan met his eyes. "We're already past the line." Emily began typing, her fingers flying over the keys. The hum of the projector filled the silence, punctuated only by the click of keystrokes. This wasn't just a counterattack, it was an all-out strike. By midday, Emily's work had begun to ripple through financial channels. Dane's liquidity was choking. Nathan took the opportunity to meet with 2 minor shareholders, convincing them to back his position in the boardroom. Rachel's unstable, he told them, and Dane's in trouble. Side with me and your shares gain value. They agreed, reluctantly, but enough to tip momentum. Back in his office, Nathan poured himself coffee, savoring the small victory. But victories in this war were fragile, always one step from collapse. That evening, Robert entered Nathan's office with bad news. Dane just countered. He's moving funds through a secondary network we didn't touch. Nathan's jaw tightened. Meaning? Robert set a folder on the desk. Meaning he still has enough to strike tomorrow. Emily, arriving mid-conversation, added, and Rachel's been meeting with board members off record. The pressure in the room thickened. Nathan stood, pacing slowly. Then we hit both, tomorrow morning, harder than before. His voice was low, each word deliberate. This was no longer defense. It was survival by preemptive destruction. Late that night, Nathan remained alone in his office, the city below, alive with flickers of neon and rain-slick reflections. He stared at the boardroom table, mentally playing out the coming confrontation. Every move, every reaction, every possible betrayal. His phone buzzed, an encrypted message from an unknown source. Rachel is about to make her move. She's not coming alone. Nathan exhaled slowly. The storm wasn't just outside anymore. It was here, pounding at the glass, ready to flood everything he'd built. Tomorrow would decide everything. The boardroom was already crowded when Nathan arrived. The rain from the night before had given way to a pale, sterile morning light that poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Rachel sat at the far end, flanked by 2 of Dane's people, both strangers to Nathan. Conversations hushed as he entered, every eye tracking his movements. Robert and Emily followed, their presence a silent show of loyalty. Nathan placed his briefcase on the polished table and remained standing, surveying the room like a general sizing up the battlefield. Rachel's smile was polite, but her eyes burned with challenge. "Shall we begin?" she asked. Nathan didn't answer. Instead, he opened the case and set out documents, proof of her secret meetings and questionable transfers. The battle lines were drawn without a single raised voice. Rachel's voice cut through the air. "Your paranoia is showing, Nathan. This company needs stability, not vendettas." Nathan leaned forward. "What it needs is integrity, and you've sold that for a seat at Dane's table." The tension in the room coiled tighter. One of Dane's men interjected, "You're overstepping, Hale." Nathan slid a single sheet across the table toward them, a transaction record tying Dane's shell company directly to Rachel's account. Silence. Even Rachel's smirk faltered. Emily's eyes stayed locked on Rachel, watching for the telltale signs of a crack. Robert leaned back, satisfied. Nathan had just drawn first blood. Rachel recovered quickly. "You think this changes anything? Dane owns the board." Nathan allowed himself a small, cold smile. "Not anymore." At his signal, Robert distributed folders to the other board members, commitments from minority shareholders Nathan had secured in the past 48 hours. Murmurs erupted as members flipped through the pages. The balance of power was shifting, right there in the room. Rachel's gaze darted toward Dane's men, but their expressions were unreadable. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Nathan sat, finally, his hands folded. "You wanted a war, Rachel. This is me ending it." The vote was called. Oh. One by one, the board members announced their decision. With each A in Nathan's favor, Rachel's composure eroded. By the end, the tally was clear. Nathan retained control. Rachel stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This isn't over," she hissed. Nathan's reply was measured. "For you, it is." She stormed out, Dane's men trailing behind her. The door shut with a thud that echoed through the now silent room. Emily exhaled slowly, and Robert allowed himself a rare smile. But Nathan knew this victory was not without cost. After the meeting, the boardroom was empty except for Nathan. He stood at the window, the city stretching endlessly beneath him. The rain had stopped, but the streets still shimmered with its memory. His reflection in the glass looked older, wearier, but unbroken. His phone buzzed, another unknown number. He answered. The same calm voice from before spoke. "You've won the battle, Hale. The war is still mine." The line went dead. Nathan slipped the phone into his pocket, eyes fixed on the skyline. Somewhere out there, the next fight was already moving toward him. And he would be ready.